Good evening, members. Prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Anthea Mitchell of St Andrew's Church, Barming Heath.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. As we begin this meeting, I invite you, in your own way, according to your beliefs or conscience, to join me in a moment of reflection or prayer. As we gather this evening in service to the people of Maidstone, we give thanks for the many different gifts, experiences and convictions brought together in this place. We recognise that we have a shared responsibility to care for our communities, to listen with compassion, and to lead with humility and integrity. We pray that the conversations in this chamber are marked by a deep respect and concern for people and place, as we lay aside our differences to work together for the good of the borough. As this season of Advent invites us to watch and wait, may we also watch and listen to the needs of those we represent, to one another, and to the quiet prompting of wisdom and compassion. We pray for the Council's work this evening and beyond, for thoughtful decisions around housing and local development, for wise discussion about budgets and resources, and for every effort to build a borough where people feel safe, included and valued. We remember those in Maidstone who are struggling or vulnerable, those facing housing insecurity or financial hardship, those who feel unheard and those overwhelmed by change. May we never lose sight of them as we speak and vote tonight, seeking the common good with courage and mercy. We give thanks too for those who serve behind the scenes, council staff, key workers, carers, volunteers and community leaders. May they be supported and valued. We pray for peace and goodwill, for patience and hope in our shared life together. By our actions and decisions here this evening, may we strengthen our community and learn to cherish what is good within it. Finally, we pray that this meeting be guided by the best of intentions and a shared purpose for the good of all. In all our diversity as we are gathered here this evening, background, belief and political view, may we find unity in our shared desire to build a borough where everyone can flourish. Can we also take a moment, please, to remember Trevor Sturgis, former business editor at the KM Group, who died recently. We give thanks for his years of dedicated journalism, his commitment to local news and business, and the way he helped tell the story of our community. We hold in our thoughts those who knew and loved him, family, friends and colleagues, and we honour his contribution to public life in Kent. He was also the Deputy Lord Lieutenant of the county. May his memory be a blessing, and may we continue to value those who work to inform, connect and serve our local communities. Let us hold a moment of stillness before the meeting begins, in reflection, in gratitude, in hope. Amen. I hope you have a great meeting.
Please be seated. Right, before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated and members of Democratic Services will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building as necessary. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the council. But will anyone else, and I see over there, be recording or filming them? I ask so that people at the meeting are aware that this will be happening. I assume that this is the KM, and I assume that you will be filming. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay, yes, you reserve your right, or you are actually filming?
I reserve my rights, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right, I now inform you all of a change of order to business. To avoid any confusion, I've decided to change the order of business to take item 16, notice of motion of no confidence, after item 13, leaders' report on current issues. Item 2, I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Dawes, Higson, Houlihan, Cadker, Povey and Reardon. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Clark.
Councillor Paul Wilby.
Item number 3. Are there any applications for dispensations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can confirm that there were no such applications.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? Are there any disclosures by officers? None. Agenda item 5. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? I see Councillor Harper and Councillor Cleater recorded lobbying. Yes, which items, please, Councillor Harper?
Items number 15 and 16.
Councillor Cleater.
15 and 16.
Thank you. Is it now agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Agreed. Item 7. Are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 13th of October 2025 agreed as a correct record? Agreed. Item 8. Are the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Borough Council held on the 17th of November 2025 agreed as a correct record? We are agreed. Item number 9. It's going to be a busy evening, so I'm going to keep it fairly short on this. The first priority I have for all of you this evening is that this is our December meeting. So as a result, I do wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you all look forward to a very happy New Year. I have to say that on my visits and events within Maidstone in the last several months, in fact, that one of the things you do come by is people who do not look forward to Christmas, who do not enjoy it and will have a struggle. This is why I continue to share an empathy with many of them, because I personally don't like December myself. For those that didn't know, it's the month when I was close to an accident and spent all of December in a coma 35 years ago. It's a memory I'll never forget. As well as that, I lost my sister on December the 15th, and I lost my father on December the 31st. So December's never particularly pleasant for me. But most of the people I meet are fearing Christmas. Many people I meet in a number of places, such as care homes, fear that they won't have their friends around them, and that they'll have a number of other fears such as their welfare and finance. So please bear in mind that it's never the best time for everybody. But for those of you that have got friends and family and will be having a social season, by all means, make the most of it. And let's all remember Dickens's famous Christmas Carol. There's always a message to be had there. The other thing I'm prepared to share with the council, for those that don't know, there's a lot of time spent in the car as a mayor, and there's a lot of time going through Leeds. I'm pleased to say that those of you who don't know, Leeds has been the subject to a massive traffic jam and problem for a number of weeks now. And for those that don't know, today I'm pleased to say, and the member over there I'm sure will be able to inform me otherwise, there's now some heavy plant in the middle of Leeds, which I suggest means that the wall is about to be repaired. Having said that, I fear the problems of traffic may get worse. But that's a mere warning for those of you who are travelling through Leeds over the next few weeks. I'm now going to go over to agenda 10. There are no petitions this evening. Agenda item 11. I have received notification from Ms Zara Duffield wishes to ask a question of the Leader of Council. As Ms Duffield is unable to be present at the meeting this evening, I have agreed to ask the question on her behalf. The question is as follows. As Cabinet on 17th of September 2025, following consideration of a petition, create a memorial to the Maidstone witches who were wrongly prosecuted, convicted and executed, it was agreed that a witches memorial be incorporated into the Heritage Spaces project, and that the Leader writes to the Home Secretary to request a piece of legislation similar to the previously proposed Witchcraft Convictions Pardons Bill, Scotland, to formally pardon those wrongly convicted of witchcraft. Given that willingness to address injustices of the past, can the Council explain why it does not apply the same principle to prevent injustice happening to residents now, by ensuring that planning decisions, climate claims and policy commitments are lawful, evidence-based and compliant with the Environment Act 2021 and the MPPF National Planning Policy Framework? Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, Ms Duffield, for your question. The Council does ensure that its decisions are evidence-based and lawful. There are a number of ways that happens. We have qualified subject matter experts. We have an experienced monitoring officer ensuring lawfulness. We publish reports. We allow scrutiny of those reports. We have planning, qualified planning people, experienced planning people there. Our decisions are made in accordance with the NPPF, and we're not aware of any successful judicial reviews on planning decisions made by the Council either. And our climate claims are based on science, well-established science. So I believe we do have the lawful right to make those decisions. Thank you.
I have also agreed to ask a supplementary question on Ms Duffield's behalf. That question is, freedom of information responses show the Council holds no 5-year residency data, no employment linked data and no CO2 baseline. So why is the Council prepared to pursue symbolic justice for the past, but not the lawful duties required to protect residents today from the decisions that destroy land, wildlife, heritage and the environment?
Thank you. Again, the premise of the question is wrong. We meet our lawful duties and we do protect people and the environment as best we can. And just for the record, our baseline CO2 data is from 2021 to 2022, so not quite 5 years, but soon to be.
Thank you for that. I can assure you that written versions of the answers will now be sent to Ms Duffield. I've received notification from that Mrs Janetta Sams wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Policy and Management. As Mrs Sams is unable to be present at the meeting this evening, I have agreed to ask the question on her behalf. You were very vocal about making the supplementary planning document for Heathlands an exemplar. In what way do you think you have been successful? This question is addressed to Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It is very nice to see Mrs Sams, if vicariously. The draft supplementary planning document, together with the local plan review, sets out the planning framework for future planning applications. The supplementary planning document has been prepared over the past 12 months through multiple stakeholder meetings, including not only representatives from within the borough, but cross-authority with Ashford Borough Council and the relevant ward members. HIAS consultants, who are leading national consultants, were brought in and have assisted with best practice. An evidence base has been prepared to support the supplementary planning documents. The content of the draft supplementary planning document has been refined through that period following feedback from local communities and stakeholders. The current public consultation closes on the 15th of December 2025, and we look forward to hearing further feedback during the formal period of consultation before we consider any final changes. We believe the SPD to be an exemplar standard. And I think it's probably worth adding as well that it was not just going through the motions, the meetings of the local group. Colleagues went through that document, that very long document, page by page, word by word, annotated and made changes and observations which were largely assimilated into the final document. And if that document is finally signed off, it genuinely will be one of the most progressive supplementary planning documents, certainly that I've ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. A written version of the answer will be sent to Mrs Sams. I have received notification that Mr Tom Sams wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Policy and Management likewise. As Mr Sams is unable to be present at the meeting this evening, I have agreed to ask the question on his behalf. On attending the Heathlands consultation on Monday 17th of November, a below freezing night, residents were forced to wait outside on this bitter evening because the MBC employed staff did not allow entry. The good-mannered and respectful attendees were quite rightly irked at this tactic. Can you confirm that the door staff were instructed to limit entrance due to the noise that would be generated by people looking and having conversations within the functions room? Over to you, Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Sams. The two drop-in sessions were held in Lenham on Monday, the 17th of November, 2025. The first was on Monday, the 17th of November, 2025, where a drop-in session was held between 4 and 7 p.m. at the Dog and Bear Hotel. At one point during the 3-hour session, entry had to be managed for a very brief period due to the volume of people already in the venue and the large number of people that then arrived at the same time. Noise was not a factor, as suggested. A further drop-in session also took place that week on Thursday, the 20th of November, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. A written version of the answer will be sent to Mr Sams. I have received notification that Councillor Eddie Powell, Chairman of Harwich Parish Council, wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Policy and Management. I assume, Mr Powell, you know the routine.
Good evening, all. The Heathlands Supplementary Planning document references the transport assessment, which is central to understanding the projected impact of 5,000 additional dwellings on the A20 and the surrounding rural lanes. Given the significance of this document in assessing highway implications and the resulting effects on the quality of life for Harwich residents, could you explain why the transport assessment document has not been included as an accessible appendix to the consultation material?
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ed. The draft supplementary planning document is made available in accordance with planning regulations and the Council's statement of community involvement. The separate transport annex and transport assessment documents have been made available all the way through the current consultation. Officers would be happy to send an email link to Councillor Powell, identifying exactly where they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. May I
Councillor
ask
Powell.
Yes, sorry.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Okay, yeah. In that case, why are the detailed transport assessments being left to the outline planning application stage, despite the inspector stating that they should be in the SPDs? With Heathlands, I can't understand why we're not waiting until KCC's new strategic transport model becomes available in spring 2026. That could change everything completely. So back to those questions.
Over to you, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that was a kind of statement. However, due process was followed and the document is available to those who need to see it, and we will send you the correct email address to find it. Thank you.
Okay, could I have that in writing as well, please? But thank you.
I'm sure Councillor Harwood will respond back to you in writing.
Thanks.
Agenda 12, there are no questions from members this evening. Agenda item 13, I now call upon the Leader of Council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Jeffrey, you may speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep this brief. Firstly, in line with yourself, an early Merry Christmas to you all. It's the last time we'll all be together. I'm not doing cards this year. I will be making donations instead. Just to give you the highlights of the administration's work since we last met, our submission to the Ministry for Communities, Housing and Local Government for the 3A option on local government reorganisation has been submitted. It was the most popular option amongst Kent councils. We have requested a full officer's report on the practical measures to embed the rights of nature in the work we do. We've requested a community cohesion strategy to be drafted following a motion to full council by councillors Millam and Harper. We'll be putting 24 affordable homes on Medway Street with no loss of parking spaces. The Christmas donation hub in the mall is open until Saturday. Please do get down there and help and donate. Our consultation on violence against women and girls is running in advance of the groundbreaking deliberative discussion that we are going to be doing. Please do share the details from the website on your social media and to your friends and supporters. The consultation on the proposed town council is now open. We have designated 2 new wildlife sites, one on Buckland Hill and one next to Bluebell Hill. We're supporting free thermal imaging, initially in Parkwood for residents there, but that will be spread more widely over the coming years. We have, as we've heard, supplementary planning document consultations open for Lidsing and Heathlands. We have the first electric bin lorry in Kent, Binosaurus Rex, and a question, if I may, to Clive: when are Now, Terry Wasterall, Incinerodon and Triceratops arriving, please. I spent hours working those out. Temporary accommodation demand has fallen by 10% in the last quarter, and let's hope it carries on in that direction. And we have started work on the 26-27 budget and programme. And we did all of that while appearing on national and international media, raising awareness of the historical context of misogyny. Thank you.
I now call upon other group leaders who will be participating to respond, focusing primarily but not exclusively on the issues raised by the leader. You each may speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Russell to lead as leader of the concern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was subjected to image altering this weekend for political purpose. A former Green Party electoral candidate and an elected parish councillor altered my image from the KM to make my teeth more yellow, give me more wrinkles, give me black pools for eyes, make my hair worse, and put a black cat over my shoulder. And then place that on social media to make his political point. He has since made a further video using my image and placed that under my statement after I clearly asked for the AI to stop. I actually wasn't that sure if the witches translated into modern day misogyny, yet now I'm left in no doubt. I couldn't care less if people don't agree with my politics. I'm elected to serve my residents until they no longer want me representing them, and I will do that to the best of my ability. I do, however, feel curiously precious about the doctoring of my face and the thought that someone had my photo on their computer and was editing it. Many questions went through my mind as I watched both men and women like the post, some from this chamber. Various political supporters put laughing emojis on it and even went so far as to say it was a better picture of me. Now, I like a laugh, I take a joke, but changing someone's actual photo using AI software is not funny, so I'm calling it out. If we go down this route, we descend into somewhere that I don't think any of us really want to go. I thank my colleagues of both genders that stood up for me, some on the opposite side of the chamber. I won't forget your kindness. And to those that liked it, stayed silent, or left it on their group for all to see, I also won't forget that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor English.
I must admit I was unaware of that because I don't engage with social media that much, precisely because, as Councillor Russell has just pointed out, it can be an extremely toxic space. I've never got particularly much abuse, but that's probably because I'm male. The abuse that's meted out to women on social media of whatever political persuasion is always higher than it is to men, or almost always. There is no defence for doing that, and if anyone around this chamber supported it, they should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves and think again. It is not acceptable. Now, and I hope that it stops, although I don't have a lot of confidence in certain members of the human race. Turning to more pleasant things, perhaps. The leader obviously hasn't got time to cover everything, but what is, in my own portfolio area, particularly pleasing is that after a bit of a dip for various reasons, the recycling rate is now trending upwards very robustly, and we are putting significant resources into dealing with those miscreants who dump another sort of waste, not on social media, but on our verges and in our woodlands in terms of fly tipping. This council is absolutely determined, and I'm sure that's a cross-party view, that those people who vandalise our natural environment by dumping large quantities of waste all over it should be held to account, brought to book and prosecuted to the full extent of the powers of this council. We are definitely having some considerable success in that area, and I'm sure that whatever else we disagree with this evening is something that we're all in favour of doing. I would simply say that there has been some suggestion that we are being distracted by media events or high profiles, but I would say that many of the things that we are being criticised for in terms of nature recovery are quite significant. For example, I don't know whether anyone saw the Eye today, a report on the fact that biodiversity in Great Britain has gone into a massive decline. We as local government, as part of the governing structure of this country, cannot simply ignore that. It is not a distraction, it is a fundamental threat to the survival of the human race if the ecosystem collapses underneath us and we don't have, for example, pollinators to pollinate crops. This is not a distraction, it is fundamental to the maintenance of the future. So I would say that we are cracking on with things that are vitally important to the community of Maidstone. Some of those things may not be obvious now, but in due course, their relevance and the importance of them will, I hope, become obvious.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And like most of the women councillors here, we want to stand in solidarity with Councillor Russell. Councillor Russell and I have agreed on many things and we've disagreed on many things. And that's absolutely right. We come at things from a different perspective. But the abuse online that women councillors are suffering is absolutely disgraceful, and it doesn't matter what party you're from. I know Councillor Rodwell has been a victim of this. I did a quick Fox Pox on Vogue and had a pile-on over that. Well, I'm sorry. These incidents are happening when we're having 16 days of action on violence against women and girls. The fact that grown men think it's okay to sit behind a computer, what example are you giving to young boys if you're a parent or an uncle or a brother? We shouldn't have to face this in the 21st century. I'm sorry, that is totally wrong. We are all used to robust debate, and I don't mind a very good robust debate. I think Councillor Forecast and I have had robust debates over football and who's the best team. But the fact is, it is absolutely clear that if you are a female, they will go on your looks, the clothes you're wearing, your weight, whether you're married, whether you're not married. Theresa May, how many of the big broadsheets were concentrating on what shoes she was wearing? Didn't ask what her husband was wearing, but her, Angela Rayner, got the same abuse. Are they capable of doing the job? That's the question you should ask. That's the only question. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter whether your hair's long, short, spiky, different colour. Are you capable of doing the job? And if you're one of those ones who are watching on, because I suspect we'll have more tonight normally watching, and you think it's okay to do that online, then shame on you. Shame on you. Because we as women in the 21st century shouldn't have to be having these battles. We shouldn't have to have it at all. And I know women officers get worse grief. Today, in the KM, was about the appointment of a chief executive, a female chief executive. They weren't that worried about what the last male chief executive was earning, but because it was a woman, they all piled on again. So we need to look carefully at what's going on in social media. And I will say this here, it's a national political thing. If social media doesn't up its policing, then somebody else will have to do it for them. Children are being groomed in misogyny, in worse things, and these companies are making millions and millions of pounds. So I'll do a little bit of national stuff there that I shouldn't have done, but they are the problem. If they are not willing to police and look after people who are using their services, then maybe somebody else needs to do it. And if that means going down the Australian route, then maybe that's something we need to consider. My only other brief point is on temporary accommodation. We are making inroads, but the housing crisis in this country and the people in temporary accommodation, we just need to be very careful on the budget. As a borough and as other districts find, that is the major stress on our budgets. So whatever we can do to actually have affordable, truly affordable, social housing. If we're building houses, that's what we need to be building, not just in the urban centre, because there is housing shortages for people who live and work in villages. And as we all know, our public transport is in a parlous state, so people need to live near to where they're working. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Harper, the leader of the Independent and Fountain Oakwood Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Christmas, and as the leader said, looking forward to everybody being back here in January, no doubt, to have further robust debate in a positive way. But I can't really follow on from what Maureen just said. I expressed to Claudine my horror earlier today of the incident over the weekend. I think we need to think, not only women, but everybody, why do people come into public life? And also, why do people not come into public life? If you're going to put your head above the parapet and you're going to be slagged off on social media for how you look, what you do, or whatever, it is a big turn-off for people coming into public life. We see that on councils, parish councils, parliament, all through society. People don't want to get involved because of the anger and rudeness and abuse social media provides. And like Maureen, I really think it's time for the government to start to look at the use of social media. Australia has set a really good example this week in terms of its younger population. That might help solve problems there. But we really need to think as a council and a borough community how we can address it, and our good work we're doing on violence against women and girls. Hopefully, you know, this is something we can use this as a real example to show the urgency of actually getting work done on that. Coming on to some of the other things, the leader referred to Kimmy and my motion on community cohesion. Not such a necessarily completely dissimilar thing, is it? You know, there's a lot of anger in our society now. We need to see how, as a society, people can come together. So I for one, are looking forward to the Cabinet's proposals coming back through the committee system on how we actually can take that forward and get a much better result for all of our communities. I welcome the Town Council. We're not there yet, but hopefully, if the residents of Maidstone Town want one, we could get a Town Council up and running as a forum to address issues of our urban area. It's great that Buckland Hill has been recognised as a local it's already a local nature reserve, but Kent Wildlife Trust recognising its value in terms of the diversity. We've got a number of these areas in the urban area, let alone in the countryside, and they need to be celebrated. As the Deputy Leader said, biodiversity is just falling off a cliff at the moment, and we need to do everything as a council to encourage the reversal of that. And I know we've got policies moving along that, but I say that's possibly going to become increasingly important with climate change, which is already here and only going to deteriorate. And on that trend, it's great that we've got our first electric dustbin van. Hopefully we're going to get a lot more of those coming through and move off having to have diesel polluting the environment. And just my final comment is around council housing. The 1,000 affordable homes, quality homes, whatever we want to call it, let's work together so that by our time we're abolished, we can get 1,000 at least council houses for our residents, and that will help address the issue of homelessness, which is a blight on society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harper. I'll now open the item to questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. Questions may be on any subject relevant to the role of leader. This will start with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to the Leader of the Council. Will the Leader of the Council explain why, in spite of the fact that KCC and NBC had already rejected many of the transport mitigation measures intended to counter the large quantum of housing in the local plan update, namely at the Wheatsheaf Junction, Bourton Parade, Shields Crescent, Sutton Road, all of these by KCC, and Linden Crossroads by NBC? Why was the local plan update still adopted by this borough in early 2024?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Of course, I can't answer that because I think all of us who were in the chamber at the time in March 2024, on this side of the chamber now, voted against it because we were concerned about a number of items, including the last-minute letter from KCC, which poured a significant question on the robustness of the plan. Clearly, the previous administrations at both KCC and Maidstone Borough Council have turned down infrastructure, which is worrying. Not that I'm keen on widening roads or building new roads, but even the basic changes means that we have a lot of gridlock. There is, however, a report currently being produced by Kent County Council, particularly around the ITP, Integrated Transport Plan, and the 14 million that they've got and they haven't spent. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that and seeing where that money has gone and if there's anything left.
Councillor Clark, Deputy Mayor, would you like to respond?
Yes, please. Can you reassure us you will be doing everything in your power to hold KCC to account on transport measures intended to mitigate the harm from the levels of housing that is planned in the local plan and the local plan update?
Yes.
Do I see any other questions? Councillor Springett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if I heard correctly yesterday, but at the PAC, I believe when they were discussing the budget, there was a mention of increasing our car park charges by 15%. I find that's an astonishing amount, and I just wonder if you could explain why you're looking at doing this, if I did hear it correctly, at a time when we know our residents are suffering from financial hardship and that our businesses in Maidstone need every bit of support that they can get. And will we not be chasing people to other areas where they can park for free or cheaper? Thank you.
Councillor English, we should answer that.
Yes, you're correct that the overall level of fees would be increasing by 15%, partly because officer recommended increases in previous years did not take place. So you have to look over a number of years. All the analysis shows that parking demand is relatively inelastic. So, and we also have to take into account that we are not necessarily competing with other towns, but other areas within Maidstone. So our prices would compare reasonably well with a private market within Maidstone. I would also point out that not all parking charges went up. A very significant reduction took place, which was intended to address the fact that we have a lot of housing in central Maidstone with no car parking or inadequate car parking. So one of the reasons for one of the proposals which was adopted was to drastically reduce the nighttime season ticket for residents who cannot get parking permits, because obviously this town centre cannot have residents parking because the street layout is unsuitable. And that will provide an opportunity for residents who live in the town centre but have nowhere to park at the moment to park much more cheaply than has been currently the case. So we have to look at the overall situation in terms of managing parking demand and providing for all sections of the community.
Thank you, Councillor English, for answering on behalf of the leader. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was interested that the leader referenced the charity fundraising in the mall, and I know from the charities themselves that they are deeply grateful for the work that the Borough Council does with regard to that. I was just wondering whether the leader would like to comment, though, because my understanding is that the support for the endeavours in the mall this year are running down something like 80% from last year. I mean, when you're talking about charity, anything that we get is to be welcomed, but it's down significantly, and I understand there are some changes in practice and availability that's going on. I just wondered whether the leader had any thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I believe maybe day 2 or day 3 was down quite significantly. I was there yesterday and volunteered through most of the time yesterday, and I spent a day there last week. On both days, I think the first day I volunteered there, we were up to about £1,000 worth of gifts donated. Yesterday, when I left about an hour earlier, because I had a plumber coming, we were up to £1,400, which is higher than the average for last year. We have got slightly condensed opening hours, and we're running over a shorter period. But we're getting the donations in. Yes, so there were a couple of short days, but it seems to have picked up quite nicely. And of course, we put out additional comms encouraging people to come down.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. The leader mentioned Christmas. I think it's a great shame that this road, High Street, is in darkness this year. And yes, there are some lights here, but there are none of the normal Christmas lights up on the posts because of the living plants. I believe they are stopping the Christmas lights. So I'm just wondering, why did you do that? Did you not consider that the shops and businesses along this road needed Christmas lights this year? And one of the main roads in Maidstone should be attractive and encouraging people into the town. It's a great shame that there's no Christmas lights on this road, and the businesses under it that don't have Christmas lights because of your living wall things.
Councillor Cannon, your dislike of our greening of the town centre is noted. I've had nothing but good comments about the Christmas lights this year. I believe our switch on was the busiest ever. I was there. I couldn't move with the number of people around us. Looking down Week Street, it's amazing. The canopy we've got outside here is stunning. And frankly, I love the living lampposts.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members. Yes, there's been a proposal to commemorate the 7 women who were undoubtedly unfairly hanged on Penedon Heath. And I personally have a lot of sympathy with that, and I think some sort of commemoration is quite a good idea. However, it seems to have morphed into a woman with a pointed hat and a cat. The only thing missing seems to be the broomstick. And I wonder why this has been allowed to happen. and who was responsible for it? Thank you.
Thank you for the comments on that. I do take issue with the phrase unfairly hanged. I would suggest murdered is a better phrase. I'm aware of the memorial that Councillor Harwood arranged through his SIL. That's not part of the work that the Cabinet has been doing, which it will be a separate memorial. I'm also very aware of the media storm. Clearly the media liked aspects of the resolution that the Cabinet made, and it's clearly put Maidstone on the international map. So I'm pleased with that in terms of promoting Maidstone, and I'm pleased with that in terms of raising the problems of misogyny, which I've used that exposure directly to do.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think that concludes that item. I see no more questions, so that is the end of that item. I now go to item 16. Item 16 is a notice of motion of no confidence. I call upon Miss Lauren Sykes, a local resident who wishes to speak on this item. Miss Sykes, you have up to 3 minutes to address the council.
As a Palacewood resident, 2 points within the no confidence motion concern me and do not reflect my views. The decarbonisation of Maidstone House is of strategic importance. As custodians of the building in a Green Party-led council, Stuart would not be acting as voters expect if he did not prioritise the environmental sustainability of the council's infrastructure and lead by example in this field. There are numerous financial, social and environmental arguments that justify this project over or alongside short-term pressures. The sign of a true leader is putting short-term gain aside for long-term benefit, even if they may not be around to see it. In parity, other government-funded organisations enduring financial and operational strain, such as the NHS, maintain their priority and momentum on net zero projects. I can't help but wonder what the challenger's true motivation is, given the well-documented level of funding that the Conservative Party receives from the fossil fuel industry. With respect to the pardoning of the Maidstone witches, there is evidence of strong support for this from the people of Maidstone, and a raft of precedent of successful campaigns of this nature in Faversham, Lancaster and the Scottish Assembly. Some of the contributors to these campaigns have been from Conservative councillors. Are you here openly criticising your Conservative colleagues too? You say the notion is academic and symbolic, but that's also true for Guy Fawkes Night, St George's Day, Christmas lights and acts of reflection. If Faversham can have recognition of those persecuted, why can't we? By disregarding injustices of the past, you're not only saying it was okay then, but you are also saying it's okay now. Both of these programmes have gone through council governance. This is not Stuart acting independently. Stuart is known to see and challenge injustice and has a strong moral compass. He was elected on these traits as a councillor and a leader. I know Stuart as his ward borders mine, and I can say I know him to be hard-working and dedicated and has an unwavering commitment to serve Maidstone. I would like to thank Claire Kelly for bringing the story of the Maidstone Witches into the present day. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Russell to move the motion of no confidence.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, I rise today not with enthusiasm but with a heavy sense of responsibility. I am proposing this motion of no confidence on behalf of my group because the people we serve deserve leadership that is focused, present and unwavering in its commitment to their everyday needs. Over the last 18 months, your leadership has shifted away from the core concerns that affect residents daily, from housing pressures to local services to the rising cost of living. Instead, significant time has been spent pursuing side projects that may be interesting, even admirable, but do not address the immediate challenges facing our community. This is a line in the sand moment. Less than 18 months has been long enough for Labour, and we have only just 2 years until our councils are changed forever by local government reorganisation. During this reorganisation process, as a leader, you would need to put personal issues aside. We will fail to achieve a reorganisation that benefits any of our residents if we can't work closely with Kent County Council. While essential issues wait, frustration grows. People see the leader of Maidstone Borough Council on various news outlets. The things that you say have real Maidstone consequences. They hear you say that you want to house unprocessed asylum seekers in houses and HMOs. Where? In Fant? In Invicta House? They hear you say that you want to give 13-year-olds the right to vote. They hear you say that you want to legalise all drugs. Well, then maybe we need to plan for consumption rooms here in Maidstone. Where would you suggest they go? The residents that elected my group feel personally unheard, and they're right. Leadership is measured not by the number of initiatives launched, but by whether people feel the difference in their daily lives, how you speak and how you conduct yourself. You've been on news outlets all over the world stating that the miscarriage of justice against innocent women convicted as witches translates into modern day issues and that we must all call it out. And yet you publicly didn't, not even tonight. You're not being true to yourself or leading in any sense of the word when you don't denounce this behaviour to show that you as a leader do not tolerate misogynistic or targeted harassment. The fact that you went as far as to love his subsequent post on the page that related to the first, pretended that you never saw the first post that remained on the page for over an hour more, and emailed me privately instead. Your email didn't tackle the issue, instead saying that the person was no longer a member of your party, that you had expressed concerns to him, and you can only try and influence him. Is this really what you mean by calling this behaviour out? This is not public leadership. Every time you speak with a banner at the bottom of the page on any news outlet, you represent us, Maidstone Borough Council, all of us in the chamber, all of the officers and staff that work for us, and yet you frequently make us look ridiculous. When you start an important cabinet meeting with, "I'm Stuart Jeffrey, leader of the Borough Council, disciple of the goddess Gaia, and I will have my revenge in this life or the next," you ridicule the fabric of this chamber. You were elected on the basis that you would immediately start a revised local plan as you hate it so much. That was your election promise to residents. Where is it? We're 18 months in and we've had one meeting. Your manifesto still states that you'll get more frequent rural buses that run later into the evening, that you'll protect much needed farmland and woodland from overdevelopment, that you'll work with broadband providers to ensure that everyone has access, particularly those in rural areas. We haven't seen any of this work. And in fact, you know that as numbers get drastically lowered on local plan approved sites in town centre or edge of town locations, that means more greenfields will need to be sacrificed to meet housing targets. You've consistently ignored our group, the largest group in this chamber, and the residents that we represent. However you try to square the circle, you are spending £7 million of taxpayers' money on a building that is worth half that amount. Your leadership puts forward SPDs on HMOs that have so far stopped next to nothing, and asks for new national landscape extensions while they know no more are currently being considered. You're fiddling while Rome burns. I hear that you'll rebut every point, and I will listen intently to your rebuttal. I hope that you will focus on your leadership vision, what you intend to do to improve the everyday lives of Maidstone residents as we hurtle towards local government reorganisation. I fear that you will descend into Tory bashing. A motion like this is never taken lightly, but when leadership repeatedly drifts from its core mission, when priorities become misaligned, and when residents feel the consequences every day, we have a duty to act. This motion is about accountability, focus and service. To sum it up, it's about leadership.
Councillor Parfitt, I assume you wish to second, but do Do you wish to reserve your right? Councillor English.
I've been a councillor for a long time, not quite as long as Councillor Harwood, but a long time. Maidstone Borough Council has had its ups and downs, but we've never had a motion of no confidence before, and I deeply regret the council that has had a collegiate atmosphere between councillors on all sides is now descending into the type of politics reminiscent of a student union into 1979. And I know what I speak of, because I was in student unions in 1979. We are accused of not focusing on the key issues, of not delivering our programme. Well, at least we have a programme. The Conservative Party in their last administration told us they were going to focus like a laser on the local plan and didn't have a programme because of it. We know that many of the things that we are criticised for, like the problem with the 5-year housing land supply, is a direct result of the failed, flawed local plan that the Conservative Party pushed through, and the decision to concentrate almost all, of the housing delivery on 3 large sites which would inevitably deliver that housing very slowly, and in town centre sites which could not guarantee to be delivered. So we are not going to take the criticism on that grounds. We then have a whole list of things that were in the Green Party manifesto. Well, I'm not responsible for that, I didn't write it. All I would say is we have an agreed programme. The Green Party and ourselves had to compromise on that agreed programme. You should not necessarily be looking at the manifesto in terms of delivery. You should be looking at the agreed programme between the two parties and the administration. But if you want to look at the manifesto, our core promise as Liberal Democrats was to deal with the problem with the refuse service and deal with the fly tipping and general rundown state of Maidstone's streets and public open spaces, and to provide more parks and open spaces. And boy, we are moving forward on those. We have the best refuse collection statistics we have ever had as a borough. We are moving ahead on fly tipping. We are moving ahead on parks and open spaces. We have a sky-high satisfaction ratings on parks and open spaces. We are going to improve those with our work on nature recovery because, contrary to what is said, that is vitally important. And frankly, I'm not taking lessons from a party that thinks property management is great if you end up with the results from County Hall from not investing in repairs and maintenance, which is what you'll get if we don't do the work on Maidstone.
Thank you, Councillor English. My next speaker is Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So none of us wanted to be here tonight debating about a motion of no confidence in the leader. I stood for election knowing very little about local government. I didn't know what a councillor was, let alone what one did. My ward looked fine, no burning issues, no obvious crises. So when the call came, I thought, why not? I can learn, I can help, maybe make a small difference. That was the deal I made with the voters, and every single one of us made. Then reality hit. Whilst residents begged for improved community safety, bins to be collected, we debated writing a letter to the government about reducing the voting age to 16, frustrations with foreign conflicts, Maidstone Witches Memorial, which did put us on the map because it made us an embarrassment, and rights for rivers. I'm sorry, that one still confuses me. So most of you opposite walked in with the same hope that I did. But from what I've seen in my early days, the majority of motions, it's just not helped the people that I was here to represent at all. Vote against this, and you will tell everyone watching here and at home their daily struggles don't matter as much as party loyalty, that keeping your seat on that side of the chamber means more than the people you're meant to represent, that holding on to your perceived power is more than the promises you made, that loyalty is to one person outweighs loyalty to every struggling family. This is not about left or right anymore. This is about right and wrong. If the leader still had the confidence of this council and our residents, we would not be here tonight, but they have been loud and clear, in my view. History will record how we vote this evening. Our families, our neighbours will remember who stood with them. I'm not asking you to agree with me on everything. I am asking you to agree on one thing, that the council is bigger than one person. The people outside these walls deserve better. Support this motion, end the chaos, and let's start to rebuild trust tonight.
Councillor Field, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, there's a lot that's been said that wasn't printed on the motion. I'm mostly going to put my comments onto the motion as framed. The first paragraph, I simply don't recognise that the Cabinet, under the leadership of Councillor Jeffrey, is deviating from the plan that was agreed by Council. And whilst I accept there are differences of opinion on what would have been prioritised in the strategy was agreed, and as far as I can see, is being followed. The second paragraph and some of the speeches made tonight concern motions and the time they take and so on and so forth. One of the strengths of the leadership that Councillor Jeffrey has given to this council is room for backbenchers, including those opposite, to bring motions. Those motions are heard, properly debated, and the energy of full council is then given to the debate and subsequent implementation should they be accepted, as would be the case perhaps with this one tonight. The motions are not the executive decision-making of the authority. They're completely different, and they take very little time. Also, I would note, as the issue of witches has been mentioned repeatedly, Maidstone is a very historically significant town, and it is right and proper that we celebrate as the county town of the largest county in the country, our history. On the local plan, look, I wasn't here when the last local plan was put through. However, Kings Hill is just up the road. It's still not built out 30 years after it was commenced. It is self-evident in planning that if you are going to put most of your bet on the local plan on very large, multi-year delivery projects, you're going to be putting the 5-year supply at risk. My understanding is that warning was repeatedly made from this side of the chamber and ignored by the previous administration. On the headquarters of the council itself, the last Conservative government introduced regulations pertaining to environmental standards that mean if we do not maintain that building to the required standards, we will not be able to realise the rent that we should be able to realise from it. This has been discussed at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that the leader of the Conservative Party chairs. It is foolish, penny wise and pound foolish, to protect today's revenue against that future revenue. So I simply don't agree with that. And on those grounds, I just don't recognise a failure in leadership, and I'm afraid I can't support the motion.
Councillor Sweetman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors. This motion has come on the back of the request to commemorate and pardon 7 women who were wrongly accused and executed in 1652 at Pennington Heath, after one of the largest witch trials in English history. You mock us. You call it a thematic project. You share opinions about costs and how much valuable council time is taken up, with no robust evidence. What is clear, this subject has gained a lot of positive coverage and interest. This knits in nicely with today's violence against women and girls, as it highlights the plight of women through history up until the present day. Violence against women and girls is also not a thematic project. It is a serious and significant issue which MBC are very committed to. This could all just be a smokescreen to deflect from our inherited troubles, those same troubles you continuously blame us for. I have total faith in Councillor Jeffrey and the team which I am part of. We are a team. What you do not acknowledge is what we have done over the past 18 months, but you have focused time on pursuing this untimely motion, because if passed, it will cause chaos and distract from these principles issues you are accusing us of neglecting. This motion is little more than a witch hunt, and I'm totally against this nonsense. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. £7.5 million. Wow. Well, I wonder if you all thought about it, what you'd be thinking you could spend that money on for the benefit of our residents now. I almost guarantee that none of you would have thought it would be a good idea to spend it on Maidstone House or other council-owned buildings. Much more can be done for our community with those funds. Is decarbonisation going to secure us tenants in Maidstone House? Not if they can rent offices down the road for less and there are plenty of them in Maidstone. Is it really efficient to upgrade a building of this age to the degree that is suggested? Absolutely not. Most of the types of updates being suggested are great for new builds, but not for old buildings, which were designed with different standards and configurations. When it comes to spending £7.5 million of residents' money on a building only worth £4 million, and which is unlikely to increase in value to the extent it will recoup the investment in any length of time, it is sheer folly. It's simply a vanity project which is of no benefit to our residents. Yes, a refurbishment should take, no problem with that, should take place, but it should be scientifically controlled so that only the most efficient changes are made to the building. By one of my residents' calculations, who has been working on projects like this for 20 years, it should be no more than 3 to 4 million, freeing up the rest of the cash for other purposes. If indeed we want to help the environment and our residents, we could use it to match homeowners' contribution to buying solar panels for their own houses, and that would be a significant step and help to our residents. I would also question the timing of this expenditure when the council is likely to cease to exist in a couple of years, and future authorities may have completely different ideas for the buildings. Very quickly, I'd also like to quickly mention my disappointment at the lack of recognition of the rural community's efforts when awarding the freedom of the borough as a result of efforts of other people made during COVID. I feel we must refocus our thinking to residents' needs, immediate needs, what we do for them, how we can improve their lives, and how we can most effectively spend their money. And I stress the words, their money. This council desperately needs new direction. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when it comes to history and culture, it's very easy to get a almost populist view that we've got a crisis, let's say, in adult social care at KCC. So why are we spending this on a library? Why have we got this archive from some fragment of Maidstone's history that we're spending time, energy and money on underneath the archive centre? That's costing money. There's a crisis here, there's a crisis there. The reason we don't is because we value a whole myriad of different operations within a council, whether it be the borough or whether it be Kent County Council. And yes, there might be things that people disagree and they may say, why are you doing this when residents are feeling this? And it's very easy to position it and say, look at this thing that the council is working on. Do you feel angry about that? Because at the end of the day, you're suffering. And I think we have to be a little more mature than that. I saw budget briefing at KCC at the time when we were reviewing libraries, and I was really shocked because there was this survey for residents where you tick the box at multi-choice, and they threw the library in there with some really hard-hitting aspects of the county, and I really felt that was unfair, because everyone's going to say, let's get rid of the library, but libraries serve an important function, as does the museum. In terms of and similar institutions. But in terms of competence, it had been mentioned about the local plan, and I think it is worth going back to that, because the local plan it came along in 2017. In 2024, when we were talking about signing off the local plan update, a large quantum of housing, the mitigation that was in that update was cut and paste from the local plan. There was nothing new in there. And when the government said that they wanted the IDP to go out for further consultation in spring, ahead of that vote that happened towards the elections, the government inspector wanted to test that, to see some further public opinion. And my response to that was that as you go down the list, almost all of these mitigation measures, I think it was 3.85 at the Wheatsheaf, there was $1 million that was being put aside at Swan Junction. We already knew at the Joint Transport Board that none of those were actually going to happen. We already knew, but we were actually putting them forward and packaging them with a large quantum of housing to say, this is your housing plan, look at the mitigation. And obviously there was a little bit of smoke and mirrors because the government inspector accepted that, which really, I really do feel was unacceptable. We raised the issues about loading all of the housing at the back end and what risk that would give. In that debate, we raised the issues of infrastructure, and I felt we gave a really good case for why we should not be signing off that local plan as it existed without further work. And I feel that that was rammed through. And I haven't heard anything this evening that makes me feel there's a level of incompetence that is in any way parallel to that sort of incompetence. So there's no question that I'm going to be supporting this confidence motion. And to quote my mother, not by a long chalk.
Councillor Rodwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm answering this with reference to my portfolio, and I'm wondering why embodying the rights of nature into a workable model which truly keeps nature at the heart of all our decision-making processes is deemed as merely symbolic, despite being within our corporate strategy. Now, in 2019, under the Conservative administration, we unanimously declared a climate and biodiversity emergency, and we committed to tackle climate change through local sustainability and decarbonisation, as well as addressing biodiversity loss through nature recovery and creating ecological networks. We cannot keep kicking this can down the road to the detriment of the generations to come. We do need an effective use of the authority's time and resources. So when it comes to future-proofing our borough, I am gratified that we are seeking a systemic, nature-centric approach to tackle biodiversity loss, pollution, habitat fragmentation, urban and infrastructure pressures, flood resilience, accessibility to nature, and threat to food security. These are fundamental issues which do affect the borough's pressing operational and financial challenges as we face an uncertain future. This motion states we need outcome-driven activity. In a 3-minute speech, I can only demonstrate a little of what we are achieving. There it goes. Our Parks and Open Spaces Delivery Plan, which is restoring, rewilding and climate-proofing our local green spaces, including the prestigious Green Flag Award for Brenchley Gardens, the greening of our town centre, the creation of 2 new wildlife sites to tackle loss of biodiversity, the delivery of truly affordable, energy-efficient homes and much-needed social housing to get our families out of temporary accommodation, the upgrading and future-proofing of Maidstone's assets to ensure that they meet tough new legislation and become more viable and sustainable for the future, regardless of what local government looks like. Our rural investment grant scheme supporting local businesses to provide for local economy, and the launch of our Nature Recovery and Climate Action Fund to kickstart initiatives for a greener and more sustainable Maidstone. Now, in terms of practical and resident-focused leadership, I am grateful for our leaders' commitment to place the practical and welfare needs of our residents, especially our most vulnerable, at the very heart of our decision-making processes, tackling inequality and truly giving residents a voice for this administration and for this collegiate, I will say, I'm going to say that again, this collegiate administration's commitment to strive towards a fairer, more sustainable local economy, whilst never forgetting our duty of care to our future generations. And we're going to be facing significant environmental challenges which lie ahead. And that is why I'm opposing this motion.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it unbelievable that Councillor Jeffrey and this administration are being criticised for the loss of the borough's 5-year housing supply, when it was the previous Tory administration's doomed local plan that got us into this mess. On the 20th of March 24, just 2 days before you lost control of MBC, you called an extraordinary full council meeting solely to get your plan voted through. The then leader of the group, David Burton, spoke the immortal words, "A bad plan is better than no plan." Incredible. Even he knew it would fail, but you wanted it to be your parting gift to the residents of Maidstone. None of you cared that you voted through a bad plan. What a shame you hadn't spent your time more wisely developing a good, deliverable plan. Instead, your plan includes 1,300 houses at Invicta Barracks, but it seems nobody checked if the MOD actually want to sell up, and it appears they don't. A plan which includes 5,000 houses at Heathlands, but it passed you by that the area is covered by a neighbourhood plan, which means the development can't start until at least 2030. And then, of course, there's Lidsing in my ward. 2,000 houses on agricultural land, nowhere near a train station, narrow country lanes into Maidstone, through Boxley Village with numerous listed properties, not to mention the harm to wildlife and the misery this development will have on existing residents. So out of the 3 strategic sites of 8,300 houses, only Lidsing will start in the foreseeable future. This gives a shortfall of 6,300, a very long way off what you had hoped for. Because we no longer have a 5-year housing supply, this will see speculative applications coming forward and will no doubt be in villages near you, especially since your local plan review reduced policy protection for the countryside. It's about time you are honest with residents and admit the lack of the 5-year housing supply is your fault, not ours. I feel this motion is nothing more than political theatrics to grab a KM headline. It's a waste of councillors' and officers' time, and with only 18 months to go before MBC is abolished, we should all be working together for the benefit of Maidstone residents, not staging stunts like this. It takes several months for a new administration to bed in, and frankly, we haven't got the time. I will not be supporting this motion, and I hope fellow councillors feel the same as me. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My recollection is that there was an independent planning inspector appointed by the government who assessed the local plan in detail and found it to be proper and sound and valid. Otherwise, had he not found that, that plan would not have been passed through. The plan was the subject of about double the amount of consultation that the administration is planning for its own review. I recall very clearly what the leader said at a meeting residents in Blenheim to discuss the Heathlands. As leader, he said he was totally against Heathlands. I think some of his former members of his group were relying on that support, and when that didn't maybe come through, maybe that might explain why Tom and Janetta were asking questions in their absence this evening rather than being here as members. But what the leader said at that meeting was that he was opposed to large individual developments such as Heathlands, such as Linsing, and his preference was to go to a method of disposal. So in other words, we're going to have housing applications right the way across the borough. So what we would look forward to is more of the same, with additional housing generating traffic. And this is an area where I completely and utterly disagree with Stuart. They took the money for the Leeds Langley Relief Road out of the budget, and there's a petition that's gaining traction now in terms of residents that say that actually and on social media there are a lot of people saying because of the trouble in Leeds with the wall that was falling down, and I do support the thought that hopefully that will be rectified soon. But roads do not generate traffic. Roads in of themselves do not generate traffic. Housing and people driving the cars is what generates that traffic. And what we have is a situation that if we go back to a method of dispersal, we'll be having more and more of the conversations that the Deputy Mayor seems to commit a lot of time to in terms of mitigation here, mitigation there. And frankly, whilst everyone's talking about mitigation, everybody else is sitting in a traffic jam. And I've run out of time.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. You've run out of time. Councillor Nedelcheva.
I'd like to express Councillor Powys' apologies for not being able to attend the council meeting this evening and to deliver in person a statement on the agenda in item 16. So I will read this statement on his behalf, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I first had dealings with Councillor Jeffrey as a resident. I had witnessed the council approving what I consider to be 2 fraudulent planning applications without allowing either to be adequately challenged after the applicant pretended to have been running a business on site when the building had actually been unattended. It must also be mentioned that although Class PA only provides for challenge of use of an existing building, a full replacement building is being constructed which is larger than the original. It won't go into full details, but I would be more than happy to share full details of the case with anybody that may be interested. My own ward councillor, after ignoring everything I sent him for over 3 years, eventually took my case seriously, agreed to take the matter to...
Excuse me, Councillor, but this is not particularly relevant to the debate. It's something as a council ward member you can take up with an appropriate officer or an appropriate cabinet member. It's not appropriate for this particular debate. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll pass this to Mr. Paul.
The next speaker I have, and I still have many in front of me, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been some very short memories in evidence on the Conservative benches this evening. I particularly like the end the chaos. Do you not remember the Conservative spring of 2024 when we had stinking rubbish piled high in the streets of Maidstone and our villages? I'm staggered. And that said, this administration has had to clean up an even more unpleasant mess in your local plan review. It's been stressed by lots of colleagues here that placing all the council's 5-year housing supply eggs in 3 rather leaky baskets, and 4 if you include the fantasy numbers for the town centre, is bad enough. But I think the point that was raised by colleagues earlier about the threat to the countryside is perhaps the biggest flaw within local plan review. I saw some kind of, confusion in the opposite ranks, but if they have a copy of the local plan review, I suggest they read policy LPR SS9. And what that did in one fell swoop is undermine the countryside protection policy that had served us well for years of opposing harm to the countryside. By changing that to significant harm, which you cannot actually frame what significant means, will open the floodgates. And I think the point that Councillor Cook made, just in response to that, about his opposition to a dispersed approach to planning, well, I've got a surprise for you. With no 5-year land supply, that's exactly what we're going to get. So I will not have criticism of this administration, which has been working genuinely night and day to plug the holes in the colander, the sieve of a local plan we've got. There are things that we can do, and I'm interested that in the kind of lack of faith in our attempt to protect the Greensand Ridge and the Lem Valley. I think there will be a surprise for you. You may have to eat your words. And we've got other tools which are available to us, and a lot of those are through the nature route. With the local nature recovery strategy, things like local wildlife sites, they do provide protection in planning. So we're working as hard as we can to deliver those now, but I've run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start off by saying that this motion is a motion of no confidence in the leader. It is not about the parties. It is not about what the coalition is doing. This is the fact that we are fed up with having a leader who pursues his own hypothetical, ideological fantasies at the expense of the residents of this borough, and this has got worse and worse in the 18 months that he's been in power, I'm afraid. And this is why we brought the motion that we have. The coalition has done a lot of good work. I agreed almost entirely with everything that Councillor Rodwell said. In fact, most of it was started by the Conservative group when we were in power on our own for only 1 year. The other 2 years, we shared power with the independents. But I need to clarify some of the issues about the local plan, as I expect Councillor Holwood and Councillor Meacham might all be expecting. That local plan was adopted by the Council in March 2024. It had taken 6 years of meticulous work to get that done, which included a 2-year investigation by a planning inspector who found the plan to be sound. In producing that local plan, we went through many councillor working parties. We discussed having a dispersed housing policy. We discussed having new settlements. We decided on a cross-party basis we would have half of our housing in new settlements, half in dispersal. That was what we agreed. At the 11th hour, for reasons best known for themselves, some councillors on the other side of the council chamber decided to vote against the local plan. Had that been carried, the borough council would have been in chaos. And that was some of the councillors on the other side of the council, of the chamber, playing fast and loose with the residents of Maidstone. The plan was adopted, it is in force, and were it not for a change of government, we may still have a 5-year housing land supply. We know very well it was incredibly difficult doing that local plan. It was not easy. And the party this side took a very heavy political hit last year because of that local plan. But we had to provide the housing that the government wanted us and told us we had to do. So we had Heathlands, we had Lidsing, we had Invicta Barracks, all identified with the best of intentions for the benefit of the people of Maidstone.
Thank you, Councillor Spurn.
Is that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Councillor Kahili.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues and councillors. Come as no surprise to any of you that I just wish to address a few issues about the witches, or the women who were tried as witches. So just to clarify a point that I'm not quite sure who it was earlier, it wasn't a motion that was brought to council, it was a petition. And it was a petition for the reason it was from local people rather than my own individual motion. A petition that had over 500 signatures on it. So obviously that went absolutely viral. The idea of that produced such media interest that it went absolutely mad. Even I got fed up with seeing myself on TV or having people say, you're on the telly, Claire, you're on the radio, Claire, can you know. But it's not reflective of the actual time spent by councillors or officers. No one was on that 24/7 in council time. It was disproportionate to the effect of it in the media was disproportionate to the amount of time spent here by staff and by councillors. The letter that Councillor Jeffrey wrote was in his own time, at whatever point that was during the day, and I'm sure that took him not much more than 20 minutes of his time. That, however, the idea that it is using up vital and resources and wasting council time fits the narrative of those who oppose it. And remember, there are a lot of people who don't oppose it. So whilst that's being debated, other things that are being successfully achieved and worked on are being ignored, and many of those have been mentioned tonight. And that is really all I wanted to say, other than the fact that the comms team are the only ones who would have really used their time on it, and they have sent several emails to all councillors over the last couple of months asking for stories, reports and photos to share out. And had I brought a petition to you about cabbages or a water pump in the area, it would have been dealt with in the same way. It would have gone through to council to be discussed, it would have gone to cabinet and they would have made their decision, and the communications would have been the same, though I very much doubt the water pumps and cabbages would have received the same media presence. Thank you.
Councillor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Evening, everyone. I just wanted to start by saying that misogyny of any form isn't tolerated. I'd already planned to say this evening that I have an awful lot of respect for colleagues on the other side of the room, particularly the women with significantly more experience than myself, and to thank Councillor Russell for all your support as a fellow ward councillor and your expertise on the casework where we cross paths. But in terms of this motion, which I oppose, we're being told that Councillor Jeffrey and this council are not providing value for money and we're not resident focused. However, our corporate strategy prioritises quality homes for all, and this council is buying and building council homes at an unprecedented rate. We're bringing temporary accommodation down and securing opportunities to provide affordable rent for people in Maidstone. And so I would argue that this is essential outcome-driven activity. Councillor Trubinski just said who here would have thought they'd want to spend £7 million on decarbonisation. As someone who's worked in council decarbonisation for about 5 years, that's probably the first thing I would have thought of, and not just because of my job, but because the business case is so strong. Providing our own energy and making those efficiencies provides money for the council in the long term, as well as the increased rental revenue from that project. We're future-proofing that building for years to come. The building isn't going to disappear into thin air when NBC ceases to exist, and we have a responsibility as the council that owns it, also to lead from the front and to play our part in tackling the climate crisis. Similarly, we're embedding the rights of nature, providing funding for nature recovery, designated wildlife sites, and we have a climate and biodiversity action plan that's actually costed and budgeted for. And the cost of inaction in this area would be a much more egregious misuse of taxpayer money. This administration and Councillor Jeffrey are balancing the books, running an effective, hard-working council, and we are doing this in a resident-focused way. I think that the vote at PAC last night for 100% council tax reduction for those unable to work and in the most need of support means that we are helping residents in Maidstone. Just because we're doing politics differently and we're putting people and planet above profit doesn't mean that we're not providing value for money for taxpayers. Colleagues have already spoken on the 5-year land supply, so I just want to add that it's really disappointing that Marden residents are left up in the air about this. Finally, the pardon for the women that were wrongly murdered in 1652. I don't think any of us expected it to get the traction that it has, and Claire's already said it's down to the fantastic work of our comms team, but also the local and international interest in the subject of violence against women and girls. If this is how much traction we've gained on the historical context, and think just how big this could get when we continue with the actual work, with the community discussion and the responses of that for the 21st century. And as a young female councillor, I'm incredibly proud of the time that Councillor Jeffrey and the rest of the Cabinet have been spending on this issue. Thank you.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. The motion mentions resident-focused leadership, and for me that is the most important thing, and I think it is where the leadership has gone wrong. Not so much the entire coalition, but the leadership. I think a lot of the issues that this council is dealing with are headline grabbing. They are focused on what the leader wants to promote, and this includes the voting age for 16-year-olds, the witches that we've already talked about, a Palestine motion in a borough council. I mean, it's a big issue, but a Palestine motion in a borough council. I mean, we should be focusing on what residents want. And I can tell you, if most residents actually were aware that there was a Palestine motion in this council, they would be horrified. Not on the issue, but it's not the responsibility of this council to be writing to the Foreign Secretary. Then there is the personal views of the leader. Class A drugs, legalised. That's his personal view. He hasn't taken his role as leader of this council with any form of statesmanship. To talk about legalising Class A drugs is a disgrace. On a public social media platform, he also backed Palestine Action. You may have seen, I can show you the video later, you backed Palestine Action, a terrorist group on social media, while leader. And and that is very significant, because this week a police officer had their back broken by one of those terrorist people, and it is a group that you have publicly backed. And if anyone wants to see the video, I'm happy to share it. You're also wasting taxpayers' money. It's been mentioned about the 7 million. You are just fast and loose with money that is not yours, and it is just not acceptable. You need to be more resident focused. On terms of the 5-year land supply, this is really significant. In Palacewood, my ward, we have a pear field that is going to be built on with 40 houses. If you had acted promptly and not wasted time the minute you got in, there is a chance you could have protected that 5-year land supply, but you didn't. And you are in charge, you are behind the wheel, and you failed to protect the 5-year land supply. So my residents, one of the last fields in Palacewood is now going to be built on, a lovely pear field. Your administration and your leadership has failed. and it's just not acceptable. Therefore, I have no confidence in the leader.
Right, Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I was first elected, I said that sometimes I will vote with people, sometimes I won't. I've agreed with the opposition, Tory group, and disagreed with them when they were also in leadership. I also listen to my residents, and not one of them have brought this issue up, to be quite honest. In terms of the witches, alleged, murdered, it was a petition, he was asked to write a letter, the leader wrote a letter, and the government said no. That was it. I don't think that took up too much officer time. We were very glad to support, when in power, the 1,000 affordable homes, and I know we worked closely with Councillor Parfitt to make sure they were at social rents at various times. The 5-year land supply, we put all our eggs in one basket and we back-ended it towards the end. The couple of hundred more that's now required, we probably should have built a buffer in, but we are where we are. So on this basis, we've delivered the waste management, we've delivered a good fiscal budget. We're not over. The only big pressure is the one every council has at district and borough level, which is temporary accommodation. And I know from working with Councillor Wales in the Housing and Community Cohesion Pack that we do quite a lot around purchasing houses to actually ensure that A, we get an income, and B, we're reducing our reliance on, and the Chief Executive will correct me because it's not bed and breakfast, but it's overnight, nightly accommodation. So on reflection, would a vote of no confidence benefit the people of Maidstone at this time, or would it lead to more uncertainty and changing things around? And I think on reflection, it's probably the latter. Does Councillor Jeffrey say things I agree with? Yes. Does he say things I totally disagree with? Yes. You know, and I tell him that to his face. But I don't see that this is a helpful motion at this time. We've got LGR coming down the road. We need to just get on with the job. So on reflection, I cannot support this motion at this time. However, I'll probably be supporting your other motion. So just to show that it's with our group, it's about what's best for the people of Maidstone. And at this time, I don't think there's no confidence vote is. Thank you.
Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion rather puts me in mind of a petulant child who fails to get their own way and then keeps asking the same question because they didn't like the original answer. Everything raised in the motion has been discussed at a policy advisory committee or an overview and scrutiny committee or in cabinet. Answers have been given and reasons and justifications made clear. If we were to follow the actions of the party opposite, Maidstone House would end up as decrepit and as unfit for use as County Hall, as County Hall became under their stewardship. We'd end up with a worthless building with no possibility of letting to tenants. All this motion does, I'm afraid, is confirm that the Tories know the price of everything and the value of nothing. This administration, however, is facing up to the borough's pressing operational and financial challenges so well that the accounts for the first year even show a small surplus. The administration is directing its efforts towards outcome-driven activity, whether it be resolving the refuse collection crisis we inherited, working towards community cohesion in the face of almost unprecedented agitation, or turning the words of the Affordable Homes Policy into reality, with projects delivering, planning approvals agreed on 2 major sites and many smaller ones, and nearly 90% of the original 1,000 homes identified. And yes, Councillor Harper, we could well be on track to identify more than 1,000 before this council ceases to exist. This and our policy of renting and buying suitable properties is having a positive effect on the waiting list and the housing temporary accommodation numbers. This motion, I fear, is a distraction from that work, and I urge colleagues to reject it.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Injuries, Mr. Mayor, and protests of injuries to people and our community, whether these are the responsibilities of leaders past or indeed present. I agree with the words of the motion, which identifies delivery of housing infrastructure, local, environmental stewardship. All the right words, though not necessarily in the right order. We are apparently ignoring the group opposite. Well, I'm happy to redress and address that complaint. I was here in the room for the unedifying display on March 2024 when the Conservative-led council in this chamber was pilloried by Conservatives from Medway, addressed by letter by Conservatives from Kent County Council. I foolishly intruded with reflections on Lewis Carroll's discussion on the meaning of words in a discussion between Alice and Humpty Dumpty. I think some people learnt some things of a cultural basis there. Is this plan sound? We were asked. I stand with the views, it may surprise you, of Councillors Hinder, Bryant, and before them Councillor Brindle, of the same party, who did not think so and voted against with their conscience. Which party is responsible for this tragic situation, our loss of a 5-year housing land supply? The significant leaders of influence and leadership were wrenched from our hands before we came to this place. And if we're going to point fingers somewhere, then the government should be getting far more attention, previous one as well as the current one. To move on, Mr. Mayor, at the summer opening of the Oldham Gallery at Maidstone Museum, our esteemed guest of honour praised the previous portfolio holder in celebrating the lives in our landscape gallery and showcasing the Neolithic sticks and stones in that excellent display, as well as the new Oldham display of early medical developments under the banner of 17th century witchcraft, with rich approval. Neither were demeaned as symbolic or academic on that occasion, and rightly so. We might recall, Mr. Mayor, the words of Margaret Atwood in her 1982 Hagey lecture, writing the male character: men fear women will laugh at them, women fear men will kill them. A distinguished voice supporting the halting and imprecise efforts of this community to draw on cultural and historical references to address our pressing social concerns, which we've heard mentioned this evening. I get used to being laughed at. I'm a teacher. It's a stock in trade for me. Newton was mocked by John Maynard Keynes, credited knowing the cost of everything, declaring this was not the first of the age of reason, but the last of the magicians, 100 years after the historical example we've heard. And now we're to debate the leader's sense of humour, Mr. Mayor. Our community has been betrayed, and my efforts are with this council in dealing with the rubbish abandoned by others. As a Green councillor, I feel well qualified and incompetent company, and may I say, Mr. Mayor, well led.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please excuse me, members. I'm speaking without notes for obvious reasons. First point, I just want to make a point about the women who were unfairly hanged on Pennington Heath. What I was saying there, as I support a commemoration, I think that is right. I absolutely do. It's part of our history. It's very important. What I don't support is the rewording and rewriting of history, which basically giving pardons for something that happened 350 years ago, to me is extremely irrelevant and rather misleading, actually, because religious discrimination, social mores were very, very different at that time. And I think giving pardons is literally the wrong approach. But nevertheless, I do want to put it on record that I do think that a commemoration of our history here is very, very important. What I wanted to say was, for 4.5 years, nearly 5 years, I was leader of the opposition in this council. And I worked very, very closely with two of the leaders of this council. And we worked very closely on what became the local plan. And we developed what I would call a degree of consensus on that local plan. And one of the consensus points at that time, and I still believe it right, was relying wholly on dispersion was a huge mistake. It caused a lot of issues, a lack of infrastructure coming out of it, and I think that was a big mistake. There has to be a balance, and one of the reasons, and there was a huge consensus, and I have to say it with the Liberals, with the Conservatives, and with the Independents at the time, that the local plan needed two or three big sites as well as spreading around the urban area and indeed in the rural area. So I think that needs to be made very, very clear. The idea somehow that it was all the Conservatives, we were only in power for 1 year, for goodness sake. There's hardly the reason most of it, a large part of the discussion, was done before. So let's get that properly right. The other point I wanted to make is that in all councils, finance is difficult. We know that. The government grants are very tight and money is very, very tight. So the work you do has to be cost effective. I heard the valuation point. I think it was a bit of a cheap point, in my honest opinion, but that's my personal opinion. I think we have to be careful and manage our money wisely. And what I do see is when I see a written down value of a property at £4 million, you know, and you're going to spend 7 million on it, that is financial insanity, in my personal view. I don't care what you think about it, that is not right, and it is public money we are talking about. And what I wanted to also say is, this is about, very quickly, it's not about the coalition having a pop at yourselves. It is, as quite rightly previously said, it's the leadership. I just think it's gone in the wrong direction, and this is why I certainly will be supporting the motion. Thank you. Sorry, I do apologise for going on.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per usual, I have not prepared a statement. I have relied on my scribbles. I don't suppose our leader gave too much thought to being the leader of the council in May 24. But when he became a leader, he was surprised. I mean, all he had to do, think about prior to that, was floods, flowers, fairness and fields. But here he was, leader of the council, leader of the biggest business in Maidstone. I repeat that. Maidstone Borough Council is the biggest business in Maidstone. It drives the economy. So your thoughts must go outside of that. I was amazed to hear one of the councillors on this side of the chamber suggesting that Heathlands, which is in our local plan, be scrapped. And we revert back to a dispersed policy, I presume. If we do not go ahead with Heathlands, then we've got to look for at least 9 sites of 500 houses. So that means Heathlands, Bearsted, Marden, Heathfields, Broughton-Monchelsea, Staplehurst, Lenham, Detling, Coxheath. You get 500 more houses. You build 500 pockets of isolation. Get real. We've got a plan. We've got to stick to it. If our leader supports Palestine Action, I've got to say, he's got my support. But I'm not going to mention those in black cloths or hanging or anything like that. But I do think our leader needs to focus on the business side of things. We are a business. Bees matter. Business matters. And this is what we're about. Thank you.
Councillor Fairgooch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. About a half an hour ago, I was actually impressed by our leader. For the first time, I thought, hang on a minute. He said something really positive and encouraging, and I listened. I didn't fall asleep or get bored, like I confess I usually do. You mentioned the rights of nature being embedded. Hallelujah. Town council, progress towards getting a town council, that started on its consultation. Great. 2 new wildlife sites. And I thought, this is getting good. And then I was amazed. Clive English came along and he really said some smashing things. Our wonderful green spaces, yeah. The success of our parks and open spaces, the record of recycling. And I thought, hang on, I'm actually hearing something positive about the business, councillor, of this borough, about the fantastic things that we do and can achieve. This full council arena is the only place where we can actually publicise it. Let's face it, whoever tunes in to a policy advisory committee, really? I don't think so. I might, because I'm a bit of an anorak, but the public don't. Who goes to a cabinet meeting? Really? The public don't. But where they might tune in is to a full council meeting. And this is the opportunity where a leader has the chance to say, come on, Maidstone, we've done this, we're planning this, we've got a problem here. And I think that's what the fundamental problem here is. And I think that fundamental problem is, with respect, that Councillor Stuart Jeffrey, who works his socks off, I know that, he works his socks off, is he the right person to be the leader of Maidstone Borough Council? And I honestly think that this is what this is about. Malcolm, you mentioned about Maidstone being a business, and I think that actually hit the nail on the head. There are these important other things that really matter to people. Yes, I will mention witches because everybody else has. But it mattered to people. But was it fundamental business of this borough? I'm not so sure. So I'm really feeling quite, do I abstain or do I support this motion? Because I think there is something fundamental. What do we expect of our leaders? If you think back to people like Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, yeah, all right.
Can you round
Don't
up,
think
please,
too much.
Faye?
But I would urge you to think about what are the qualities you want of a leader. We're already doing the good work. Councillor English has outlined some of it, so did Councillor Rodwell. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In the order, so far there are still a number of other speakers yet to speak. However, I do have Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. For the record, I spend a huge amount of my time being an ally to women, and I will continue to do so. In regards to the thing that happened at the weekend, I asked, when I was alerted to it, I asked the former member of my party for the original post to be removed, and yes, when a better, but still not great one, replaced it, I was relieved about that. And while it's great that I think Councillor Rodwell has led some getting the women together, I actually want men to change, not women. I'm clear that it's men that have a problem, and we men need to do everything in our power to address it. I am therefore pleased that our administration is focusing on VORG and community cohesion. And Councillor Gooch, local government is a business, but we also have a role to play in community leadership, and I think that's it. That's one of the roles. I've written down play the ball, not the person. And some of the, well, it's a motion of no confidence in me, so yes, it is the person. But comments from Conservative benches are quite personal, and they feel quite hurtful. And that includes the defamatory comment from Councillor Cannon. And if you do have evidence of that, I'm surprised you haven't handed it over to the police, because I did not make that statement, certainly not after the organisation was prescribed. 9 months ago, our council agreed strategic priorities and our action plan, our programme for this year to deliver. Last month, we took papers to the PACs to demonstrate the progress against these actions. 5 completed, 25 on track, 4 slightly delayed and 1 paused. So the idea that we're not delivering what we agreed is ludicrous. You mentioned the rights of nature. Just reread the corporate strategy, it's definitely there. You talk of fiscal stewardship. Yes, in the first year of this administration, we had a small surplus. This year looks as good. The refurb of Mason House is required, or we will have a significant depreciation to fund. And we have to refurb it because on your watch, you failed to do due diligence on the heating system. We are where we are because of the failures of the previous administration. I think the bins have been mentioned. Thanks for leaving those to us to sort those out. The 5-year land supply has been covered. Tony and Vanessa and others have said lots on that. Other than the LPR, your administration did next to nothing in its final year. I remember spending each council meeting reciting a growing list of unmet promises. This administration is delivering a huge amount. You just don't like what we've done. You even complained about the number of things I mentioned in my last leader's speech. And yes, we have started work on, we did start work very soon on the next local plan. There's a load of preparatory work, and yes, it's taken a while to get to the point where we can start sharing the wider plan. So this administration, under my leadership, we are building social homes at a fast rate. We have better environmental stewardship.
Jeffrey, you only have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, tonight it's actually nice to be an independent of all the party politics we've heard thrown around tonight. I've known Stuart a long time. We've fought election campaigns against each other for many a year in Fan. However, we've held hands and made up since I won over him. I've always, both as leader of the current Fountain Oakwood Independents and previously as Labour Group leader, worked in this chamber with all parties, both the current Green administration and previous Conservative and Liberal ones. I've always supported working, and the groups I've been in, working with anybody who would work for the good of the borough so that we can move forward. I was surprised to see this motion on the agenda tonight. As I say, I support collegiate working, and I've been doing that for 11 years on this authority. I do share some of the concerns over the refurbishment of Maidstone House. I think, and I have told the leader, that I think we need to focus in the time left to us before reorganisation. We just need to remember that by April 27, the government will bring in what they call a Section 24, which will stop us as a council doing any expenditure on new projects over £1 million and any revenue over £100,000 without the say-so of the new unitary authority. So that really gives us 1 year more before really it's more or less the end of this council. So we need to achieve a lot during our remaining time. One of my main concerns, I expressed it at last night's Policy Advisory Committee, was over our capital programme and the slippage. The fact that we're £14.5 million behind, 29% unspent this year. We can't afford that. We have a year to get projects finished or committed
so that we're allowed to carry them through. That is the only way we will get our council housing built in the borough, and the only way we will get some of the other projects I think everybody wants to see done. I want to see a lot of work done on things like Article 4s and HMOs, hardly surprising, is it? I want to see a town council established, a town centre strategy. There is a lot for us to focus on. But Stuart, I will support your leadership tonight, but I hope you will take on board some of what I have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things I've got to mention. I feel sorry for Councillor Kahili tonight because she just brought a motion to the council, something she felt passionate about. And she felt, and I would, if I had something passionate, I'd try and bring it to the motion. The leader of the council supported that, which I'd expect the leader of the council to do if he agrees with it. So there wasn't expense or time, but I've been the councillor for Pendon and Heath for many years. It's now covered by Richard and Tony as well. And it's always had a bad history. And to think to put something there that actually explains it a bit more for people that walk around it, knows there's a garden there, and we're going to do something with the clock as well, because it is got a very bad history. Most of the history that's national is bad in Maidstone. The first thing I did was the Roundhead Civil War by the museum, little plaque there saying how many people that got murdered there. That was worth doing. And I think this one, again, national momentum because the statue came along at the same time. Now that's a plus. We've had a lot of world coverage at the moment, one way or another. And I don't give up on it. That's the thing. And other things I like to cover. The local plan, for the first year, as I remember, Marden was the #1 for about a year and a half because it had a train station, everything's going for it. I wasn't really involved that side of it at the time. That was for higher ups. And all of a sudden it was pulled, which caused utter confusion, and everyone was asking, where's Lindsay? Because no one knew who it was. And to me, that's on roads with no footpaths. They mainly look like people's drives, actually. If people get lost, they think they're going up someone's drive. And the other thing was Medway Council were going into that area as well. So it seemed utter chaotic to do anything with Medway Council because they're supposed to agree to work with us, which I don't think never happened. And with Lenham, even the inspector said that should not go ahead without a train station. The inspector said that. That's the one thing I remember. Because obviously we had people coming from Lenham all the time to protest about it, and still will. That the local plan was flawed from the start, really. And I always said we shouldn't be putting the army barracks into the local plan because you don't know what the future has. And here we are today. It's going to, apparently it's down to close now maybe in 2031 because of the situation we got in the world now. It would just, if we close it, it'd just be like we normally do. We're never ready for anything because we scrapped everything like in the Falklands War. And someone said about working with KCC. I'm going to suggest we give KCC no more money till we know they've spent what we've given them already. £14 million for the road. Lenham, Hollingbourne Primary School have lost money, all because it's all drifted into their pot. And it's one of the things I'd like to bring up in the future. But as for tonight, I think we've got a very strong leader and a strong cabinet. Thank you.
I believe I have no more speakers other than Councillor Parfitt, who reserved her right and seconds the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be clear, this motion is certainly not a stunt. It is about establishing demarcation between the leadership and our group. When Councillor Jeffrey became leader 18 months ago, I genuinely wished him success, as I did the Labour government and more recently the Reform County Council. When they succeed, we all win. When they fail, we all lose. And I care far more about my borough, my county and my country than any political party. Perhaps I should just stop wishing people well. Much has been said tonight, but I want to focus on the infamous witches, women.
Though a small part of a bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates my loss of confidence in the leader. When Councillor Healy brought forward the motion and petition, I admit it wasn't something I would personally have initiated, but it mattered to her and it mattered to the petition signatories. A respectful recognition of historical injustice, a gesture to wronged women, and a symbolic link to our modern fight against violence towards women and girls and against misogyny. The vile social media we saw over the weekend made that need painfully clear, exposing the hypocrisy of today. Many loudly claim to stand against violence towards women, yet their compassion seems to stretch only to women they deem worthy, and not those who dare to hold a different opinion. A genuine thank you to Councillors Rodwell, Keeley and Cleater for supporting Councillor Russell. It was sincerely appreciated and it will not be forgotten. Nor will it be forgotten those men who chose, from this chamber, who chose to like and love those posts. However, a few weeks later, the matter had transformed entirely. Instead of a measured act of recognition, we had Councillor Jeffrey on local, national and international news calling for pardons. He became an object of incredulity and frankly ridicule. And I know because I read it endlessly. The irony, of course, is that the spotlight ended up on a man, rather than Councillor Keeley, the woman who actually brought it forward. Councillor Jeffrey was also told a pardon is the wrong mechanism. It merely forgives a lawful conviction, thereby admitting they were witches, the opposite of what the petition intended. To truly right past wrongs, we must get it right. Good leaders, when presented with new information, do not double down on their mistakes. They show alacrity, agility, they show judgment, they correct course. He did none of those things. The final insult, the installation of a statue on Pennenden Heath meant to represent our borough, and the depiction of the single woman is unbelievably a witch. At a cost of £14,000, all we've succeeded in doing is reinforcing the very injustice we were trying to condemn. I raised this with Councillor Jeffrey. His response was simply to throw a cabinet colleague under the bus. That is not leadership. Being leader requires far more than good intentions. It requires thinking about the whole borough. It requires a cohesive cabinet, a united voice and a consistent message. It's fundamentally different responsibility from being the sole Green councillor on the back benches, basically free to say whatever you like. The borough deserves better. Thank you. And while I'm on my feet, I would like to call for a named vote. Thank you.
We therefore need 5 people to support that. Right, that's confirmed pretty well throughout the House. On the basis of the motion was actually moved by Councillor Russell. She has the right to respond finally.
I think there's probably nothing more to say on this. It is not about everything that the coalition has been doing. It's about leadership. Every other comment that was made was not necessarily to do with leadership. That's where the motion was raised. That's where the motion is focused, and on that basis, we vote.
Thank you very much. There will now be a vote on this motion. Are officers ready?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are ready. So if I could just invite members to say whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Barwick. Against. Councillor Burke.
For.
Councillor Cannon.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cleater.
Against.
Councillor Coates.
Against.
Councillor Conyard.
Against.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Couch.
Against.
Councillor English.
Against.
Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Forecast.
Councillor Fort.
For.
Councillor Gooch.
For.
Councillor Greenham.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Harwood.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Against.
Councillor Jenkins Baldock.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Kahili.
Against.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor Millam.
Against.
Councillor David Nagy.
Against.
Councillor Mark Nagy.
Against.
Councillor Nedal Chaver. For. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Parfitt.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Rodwell.
Against.
Councillor Rout.
For.
Councillor Russell.
For.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Springett.
For.
Councillor Summerskill.
Against.
Councillor Sweetman.
Against.
Councillor Mike Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Chabinsky.
For.
Against.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson.
Against.
Against.
Thank you.
Whilst the votes are being counted, I'm going to suggest that we do have a recess for 15 minutes after this event because we've been here for over 2 hours.
So, members, if we might just remain so that I can tell you the outcome. There were 14 votes in favour of the motion and 28 against. So on that basis, the motion falls. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember that while some people may be applauding it, this is a democracy. Thank you. I have a recess for 15 Members, can you take your seats, please? Members, and we're now going to go back to the agenda as is agenda item 14. I call upon Councillor Mackay to move the recommendation of the Licensing Committee relating to the draft statement of licensing policy 2026 to 2031. The recommendation is on page 11 of our papers. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the draft statement of licensing policy 2026 to 2031, attached at Appendix 1 to the report of the Licensing Committee, be approved, and that the Head of Housing and Regulatory Services be given delegated authority to make any necessary typographical amendments before publication of document. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Nagy, you wish to second.
Yes, I'd like to second that, please. Reserve my right.
That is noted. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the matter? Is it therefore that the recommendation is agreed? Are we all agreed? Agenda item 15, notice of motion. Article 4, direction to remove permitted development rights at Invicta House. I call upon Mr. Sean Turner, a local resident, who wishes to speak on this item. Mr. Turner, you'll be familiar. You have up to 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members, and season's greetings to all. Hopefully a little bit lighter. Tonight I address this council to set out 4 points in relation to Notice of Motion Article 4 direction for Invicta House. 1. Lack of lawful housing need evidence. Freedom of Information responses confirm that neither Maidstone Borough Council nor Kent County Council hold verified data on 5-year local residency, local employment connections, or disaggregated local housing need. Without this statutory baseline, the Council cannot lawfully justify residential intensification through permitted development, particularly in constrained urban locations such as Invicta House. 2. Risk of relying on permitted development rights. Conversion of Invicta House under permitted development would bypass essential scrutiny, prevent the Council from requiring infrastructure contributions, Community Infrastructure Levy or S106, eliminate the ability to impose safety, design or amenity conditions, undermine town centre planning principles, and risk unsuitable high-density accommodation being placed directly in the public realm. 3. Environmental and climate claims must be evidenced. Permitted development is often positioned as sustainable or low impact, yet no environmental baselines exist for Maidstone. No assessment has been made of cumulative impacts. No evidence shows climate benefits for the town centre. The UK contributes less than 1% of global emissions. Therefore, claims of climate necessity must be evidence-based, not rhetorical. 4. Safeguarding and service pressure considerations. Invicta House is not appropriate or safe location for residential accommodation of any kind. The surrounding area already experiences overstretched emergency access, persistent antisocial behaviour and policing demand, highway congestion and parking shortages, health service capacity at breaking point, serious safeguarding risks associated with high-intensity accommodation in vulnerable areas. These issues are not mitigable. They form part of the reason why permitted development is unacceptable. It bypasses the very assessments that would demonstrate the site's unsuitability. A full planning application would reveal impacts so severe that refusal would be the reasonable and likely outcome. Conclusion. Article 4 direction is not simply justified, it is essential if the Council is to maintain proper planning standards, ensure residency safety, protect the town centre, prevent unsuitable intensification, and make decisions based on evidence rather than assumption. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Russell to move the motion relating to an Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights at Invicta House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not one of our assets. This is a KCC asset. I realise that. I do realise the burden of evidence is high, but it can be met in this location. Just because it's a KCC asset, it doesn't mean we can't have a hand in whatever happens to its future, whatever that would be. And Article 4 would really just help us guarantee that this area is the best that it can be for our Maidstone residents. The main thing, if it goes through full planning, is that we could get Section 106 or SEAL contributions for things like education, highways, adults, social care, things we definitely need. I noticed that we might be looking at or thinking about an Article 4 in general, but I don't think KCC are going to wait for us. We need to make sure this building has full planning for whatever its future use is. Without it would be a dereliction of duty to the residents of Maidstone. I think this is something we can work cross-party on. I think we can all see how this will benefit Maidstone, and quite frankly, we just need to get on with it. I've seen the extra papers, but all I would say on that is officers advise, members decide. When I'm looking at previous Article 4s, it said something about they've lapsed. I can see the one for Romney Place was made on the 17th of February 2022, which came into force on 17th of February 2023. So I'm not quite sure I tally with that, but that's what I found on the website. They used to be on the Maidstone website, but for some reason they've come off recently. But anyway, hopefully this is something that we can look to achieve together for this important location in our town. Thank you.
Councillor Parfitt, you wish to second?
I do.
Are you? In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 12.9.1, there will now be a debate on the motion during which it may be amended or withdrawn. At the conclusion of the debate, in accordance with Procedure 12.9.3, if there is no proposal to refer the matter directly to Cabinet, I will refer the matter to a relevant Policy Advisory Committee, a PAC, having sought advice from officers. However, I'm advised by Councillor Clark that he wishes to move an amendment. After Councillor Clark has moved his amendment, I will be looking to Councillor English.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've made an amendment because in 2018 we brought Article 4 to our chamber to protect our best office spaces. All of our neighbouring boroughs were doing the same, and unfortunately I made that proposal, and that proposal was refused because the administration at the time did not support it. It took a full year to 2019, working with Rob Jarman and the planning team to get the evidence to work out which were the best employment sites. These are actually proper assets for our town. These are not sort of crummy buildings that we don't mind if they become converted. These are actually the grade 1 office buildings. There was 14 of them. We got them protected in 2019. But in 2018, not only was it refused, we even tried to call it in. We took that to Policy and Resources and we lost it again. There was mention about undue we were putting undue controls on building owners. The only reason we got it a year later is because so many London boroughs had come sniffing around our borough because all of our neighbours had got Article 4s or they were progressing them. We were giving a green light to those London boroughs. If it costs $450,000 to buy a studio in the old Upton Park site, what are Newham going to do when they see a distressed building in Maidstone that looks like it might be quite suitable for their tenants? And 2 years on, those tenants have part of Maidstone's responsibility. So I'm splitting point 1. So I'm requesting that the Head of Planning and Economic Development advance a case for protecting the borough's 14 best commercial buildings as identified by the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee on 10th of September 2019 for renewed Article 4 protection after the original protection was allowed to lapse by MBC's administration back in 2022. That actually when I was actually working this with the cabinet, because we don't need to put motions forward. We can actually progress these things with the cabinet. We were doing that. It was only the work that we did there that we found out that the administration in 2022 let these lapse. So guess what's happened with conversions in Maidstone? So that's the one. First of all, we protect the 14 best commercial buildings. Secondly, we build upon the work undertaken to date by the Cabinet and members to progress an Article 4 direction on Invicta House. Yes, we were working on it. We're singing to the same job sheet. But also, perhaps since 2019, there might be some other buildings that have come under risk. So I've added a third point, which is identify other valued commercial properties in the borough that could be vulnerable to permitted development for this council's consideration for Article 4 protection. Now, we're going to refer this all to the Cabinet. Points 2 and 3, consider the gaining of Article... So that was 1ABC. Points 2, consider the gaining of Article 4 directions for the properties mentioned in points 1A to 1C as a matter of urgency. Small amendment to accommodate 3 points in one. And continue all procedural steps to bring about Article 4 directions for all properties mentioned in 1A to 1C. We need to protect our valued job sites in this borough. If they all go to housing, guess what we've got? We've got a bedroom community. We identified them, we surveyed them, it took us a year, we said they're valuable and they need saving. The fact that they lapsed, and we only found this out when we started looking with the Cabinet as to what we could do with Invicta House, I really found it shocking. But then I saw this motion and I thought, well, hold on a minute, that's a bit limited compared to what we actually need to do for this borough. So I move my amendment. I hope it may receive support from this chamber.
Councillor English, you wish to say?
Councillor Clark, could you turn the thing on? Just a technical point. The reason for the lapse was complicated, but it was not unconnected with the changing in approach from government policy, so which made getting Article 4s much more difficult. So I think we do need to understand the background completely. Article 4s are incredibly difficult to get. That does not mean one shouldn't try to get them necessarily. Contrary to what was said earlier by a member of the public, there is no particular impediment to making a planning application, providing or bringing this forward as prior notification. So we do need to look at Invicta House as a matter of priority. I do think, and this is why I'm supporting Councillor Clark's amendment, that we do need to look at the wider aspect. What may possibly need finessing, and I know making drafting changes to an amendment partway through is possibly a little tricky, but having heard the arguments, I think there may be an issue for doing this slightly in order so that Invicta House is progressed quicker than the others. So, but I would recommend that we do refer the whole issue as amended, subject to putting in a wording about fast-tracking the Invicta House work, because I think that is possibly rather more urgent. So I don't know whether Councillor Clark is okay with that, but I do think that if we did that, we would actually be reflecting the will of all members of this council, and we would actually allow the PAC to have a proper look at how we bring that forward and phase it. Sorry to spring that on you, Councillor Clark, but it's just occurred to me in the last 5 minutes.
I just asked for some
Yeah.
clarity.
I'll ask some further clarification here.
Can I clarify, please, Councillor English? Are you seconding the amendment?
I'm seconding the amendment, but I'm wondering whether the mover of the amendment would, and the council would be willing to hear a drafting amendment
Okay.
to the amendment.
If I might make a suggestion, just so that we can keep things fairly simple. If the objective here, whether it's the original motion or the original motion amended, is to refer to the PAC and then to the Cabinet, there'll be plenty of opportunity to finesse and consider small changes at that stage. So without wanting for a moment to undermine what you've said, maybe it would be better simply to go on what is on the papers.
I was just trying to assist and getting some consensus, because I like to try and be positive and get an outcome that all members can support.
In that respect, Councillor English, can we ask Councillor Russell, who proposed the first motion, to have a further say?
My worry is that this was a singular building. I do appreciate that it could get expanded, but I mean, I do applications all the time. I think once you've got one and you've got a way of doing it, you've got it all set, you can just change, you know, you don't have to rewrite the whole thing, do you? You can change it and send it in. My worry is it's timely with this. That's my worry with this particular building, and I completely agree what you're saying. I think maybe there should be a second phase and we should look at some others. But I don't want to accept that amendment into my motion tonight, because I think we just need to get on and do with Invicta House, and then more than happy for that to be considered a PAC and then the Cabinet. That the routing is fine, but I want the original motion to go to the PAC and then the Cabinet, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Could I
So, point of order.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It really is a point of order in terms of, does this constitute an amendment for consideration, or is it an entirely new motion? And I think the level of variation from what we have as an original motion to the amendment is so great that this should not be considered as an amendment, but it is an entirely new motion. And I'd like your ruling on that, please, sir.
So we've looked at it very carefully. It builds on the original.
It is the view of officers this is a valid amendment. So we now need to discuss the amendment. Councillor Harpen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We know the Reform County Council is pushing ahead with its plans to flog off Invicta House. The BBC's quoting £3.3 million imminently, and an HMO at this site would be absolutely catastrophic. We would end up getting potentially hundreds of homeless people from London dumped in Maidstone with no support, no jobs, and no links to the area. And as a committed development, we would have no seal or Section 106 towards the services we or our successor would need to provide to support those people who will be almost brought here against their will. I think it's really important for us to really fast track this thing, to get this Invicta House protection in place, if we could do tomorrow night, when we actually have the plan, in fact, which I chair, because it's that quick. We're in a race against reform in terms of this building. the issue of HMOs, generally, people know I've been banging on about it for a decade in this chamber. We see, and Kimmy and I and Patrick do work all the time, where some of our roads in our ward are 20 to 28% HMO, mostly under permitted development, and the impact that has had in large areas of Thanet has been disastrous. So I plead for us to keep to the original motion, get the clarity around Invicta House, then at the PAC we can discuss the amendments and so on, but at least get Invicta House moving ASAP. Otherwise it will have been sold and it will be a permitted development HMO and there's nothing we can do about it. Thank you.
Councillor Cleater.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Very much like Councillor Harper, I have no problem with the amendments if it was a motion, and I would happily support it. But it's time critical on Invicta House. I mean, the fact that it's totally unsuitable to be converted into housing is not going to bother any developer whatsoever. I did the inspection with Lee Stringer, head of property, when KCC bought the property. That shows how old I am and, you know, whatever. And again, I find myself agreeing with Councillor Cook, so the heavens are probably going to open and fall down upon us. But let's be clear here, KCC's having a fire sale, and they will sell that as soon as possible. We haven't got time to wait on Invicta. I absolutely agree with all the other buildings that we need to protect. So on that basis, I will support the original motion. I'll probably not support the amendment, but please take it to a PAC and then we can pass that as a motion and get that dealt with as well, because I don't think anyone in this chamber wants more permitted developments where people who don't want to be here, to be quite honest, are going to be in substandard housing, because Invicta House is barely usable as offices. It certainly isn't suitable for housing. And I, for one, didn't come into politics, as I'm sure everyone else has in this council chamber, to house people in slum housing. So on that basis, I will support the original motion. I'll oppose the amendment at this time, but should it come to a committee, I'm happily to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay, I believe you wanted to speak as well.
Well, Councillor Keita has rather stolen my words, really. It's all right. No. She talks sense. The motion makes sense. Let's get on with it and do it. I'm not interested in who stole someone's sweeties in 2018. Quite frankly, that is irrelevant. We're here. We've got to deal with today. Let's move forward. So I support the motion. I do not support any amendment to it. But we do need to pursue this outside of Invicta House.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Very, very briefly, I just want to make the point from a procedural matter now, insofar as the only way that we can actually vote on the motion, the original motion, is to now reject the amendment. And I just wanted to emphasise that if people are sympathetic with that, but I'll vote for the amendment. So the amendment needs to be rejected. We then pass the original motion, and then we look to the Cabinet and the PAC to pick up the thrust of what Councillor Clark, in his capacity as Deputy Mayor, has brought today. But I do think the urgency of this is what we need to address this evening, and in that sense, we need to pass the original motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. I'm listening to this debate with some disbelief. I actually think that this is a distraction that slows things down. I am the ward councillor, I am the cabinet member. As soon as this issue arose, Of course I was talking to the senior officers, of course I was talking to the planning policy team, of course we were looking at some response that will actually work so that we don't lose a very sustainable employment location directly opposite the Maidstone East station. I do not think all of this talking about permitted development rights and conversion to slum flats and so on really helps if we are seeking an Article 4 directive. The bar is very, very high. We need to provide genuine evidential underpinning as to why this building needs to remain in a commercial office use. And we, as colleagues will know, I wrote to the then Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State last October with a very long letter talking about permitted development and some of the issues. And we actually did have a very constructive response, which actually has changed a little bit, the relationship, particularly with London boroughs and with some of our neighbouring authorities. So I don't know, I just find it a little strange that this motion came out of nowhere. No one spoke to me about it or to the officers who had already been working on this. And I know a little bit about Invicta House. I worked in Invicta House from the very first day I think it became an office to the very last. I think I had the misfortune of having the best office and the worst office in Invicta House, and the worst is pretty bad. And that brings me to the point around making this building technically able to absorb a flats conversion. Everyone knows it's like a big polo mint. There's a big, without a mezzanine in it, which is a huge investment, which I can't see the kind of companies behind this will want to do. I don't think people will be knocking themselves down. I mean, certainly when Commercial Union built it as their headquarters, they never actually even moved in. And the building sat empty for many, many years before KCC stepped in and purchased the building. I also remember the Wig and Gown, the pub that stood on the ground, 45 pence a pint. Yeah, that's how times have changed. Thank you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to call for a vote on the amendment, but Councillor Clark is allowed to close.
So I do take the points raised, and I know it's being worked on because I've been working on it with the cabinet member. So if we're going to withdraw anything, we should withdraw everything and actually get rid of just withdraw the motion. The reason I've brought this to this chamber is the fact that we've got 14 buildings that we have, as a council, determined to be our most valuable buildings. Now, if the Bay Bridge, if somebody found out that 3 years ago the Bay Bridge lost its underpinnings and it's at risk of earthquake, you would want to do something immediately to look at what the hell is going on with those 14. Is there a lease about to expire? Is there somebody that's looking to buy them? Is there some deal that could be in early stages? So what do? Just ignore 14 and just go for one? Now, in terms of priority, I totally agree with that. We've even talked about the fact that Invicta House is the important one. So I was actually trying not to make this any more complex than say, let's look at Invicta House and look at these 14. If we look at that and we do a priority on it based on what's happening to those 14 and what's happening to Invicta House, and Invicta House becomes number one, so be it. I'm happy with that. This doesn't exclude that whatsoever. We can make Invicta House a priority. The problem is, I don't want us to turn our backs on these 14. We may look at these and there might be 2 at risk, but we look at them. We don't push 14 forward when we say 12 of them aren't at risk whatsoever. Maidstone House is on that list. We know we're not going to spend much time pursuing Maidstone House over Invicta House, but what happens if there's a couple of buildings on there that are at severe risk? And I think that if we don't take this amendment, we're closing our minds to something which is 3 years out of date. 3 years out of date. So I'm going to say it's already being handled by Cabinet. The Cabinet member has said that he wants to pursue it. If we're going to do anything, we either go to protect all of our best spaces, or we say, you know what, let's be reassured by the Cabinet member. Let's not have this frivolous motion, and let's just get on the business of running this council.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, Councillor Caheen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are you seconding that? Because
Sorry?
it has now come to an end.
Okay, thank you.
on the amendment. So
She was asking for clarification.
right. Oh, right. We are now taking a vote on the amended motion. That has been proposed by Councillor Clark. We are not debating. We are not voting on the motion. We are voting on the amendment. So now, ladies and gentlemen, for the amendment as per Councillor Clark, all those in favour? Against? Abstentions? The amendment falls, so for clarification, we now vote on the motion. But we can now debate it. The votes are...
Thank you, members. So the votes for 12, the votes against 20 and 7 abstentions.
Right, now, the motion. Those wish to speak. Councillor Harper.
Well, as chair of the relevant policy advisory committee, which I assume this will be coming to, I look forward tomorrow night to adding it to the forward plan, because despite what Councillor Harwood said, I checked the forward plan just now, and there was no reference to any reports coming up to Victor House, either in the January or the February cycle. Hopefully there will be now.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I really support this motion, and I think this council needs to just send a message to KCC that this isn't on the table, and we need to do our best as all parties to try and protect this building. And just briefly, I know I felt bad voting against your motion, Councillor Clark, but I do support the principles of what you've mentioned as well. So I hope that can come up in committee. So.
Councillor English.
I'm not too fussed about the outcome because I think the discussion can move on at a pack. I would point out that there are reasons why delegated decisions don't always appear on forward plans. If it's not so, that's not necessarily a point that says that the work isn't taking place. I think it's important that as a council we consider moving forward and can weigh all the options that we have. However, don't be under no doubt, an Article 4 is a very challenging thing to get, whether it's for Invicta House or the other office buildings that are under threat in Maidstone. It's worthwhile looking into how we can do this. Not Councillor Harwood and the office team have not been doing that already, but transparency and public discussion is not a bad thing. I would say that it may be that there are other approaches that are better for dealing with this, and they need to be taken into account in the discussion as well, so that we don't concentrate all our eggs in a process with a particularly high bar and then find out that we don't have a plan B or a plan C, which I suspect we may need with some of these buildings.
I'm now going to close the debate, but allow both the proposer and the seconder. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cleater did wish to speak.
Just quickly, because we're actually doing what I was going to say anyway, which is move to the vote, but just to correct Councillor Harwood, it wasn't Commercial Union, it was Municipal Mutual Assurance, who went bankrupt overnight and left huge swathes of local government to the NHS without insurance cover for 24 hours. I had to deal with that kerfuffle. But now I think we're pushing at an open door here. We all agree there needs something to happen, so I think we should go to the vote.
Councillor Russell, Councillor Reid, Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I had hoped that this motion was going to be slightly less contentious than the last one, but maybe that's not the case. I think Councillor Clark has brought some very valid things to the table here, and I certainly think they should be advanced. But I think in this instance, we need to just get on with it. Brilliant that Councillor Harwood is already on it and has been working with it. Obviously, the bar is very high, we know that, but I have faith in Councillor Harwood and I have faith in the team. So I think we should just get on and do it. Thank you.
The debate is finished because we've finished. Councillor Russell concludes.
I don't really need to sum up, but let's just go to the vote. Thank you.
Right, we now go to the vote. So I am referring it to the pack. Agreed. Now declare the meeting closed.